let's make some mango macadamia nut macarons. I'm so excited to share this recipe with you. It is so fun and I think really great for late spring, early summer kind of tropical vibe. And it's not too sweet, which I just love. To start off, I am making a very basic French meringue macaron shell, but I have some chopped up macadamia nuts that I will be sprinkling on the top. If you really want to, you could grind the macadamia nuts down until you get a powder and replace some of the almond flour. But since we will also have a macadamia nut praline on the inside for additional macadamia nut flavor, I think having just the sprinkle on the shell for texture and appearance, and then the filling flavor is totally sufficient. But again, if you want to do that almond flour replacement, you could. After everything is incorporated and macaronaged for my batter, I'm just going to transfer my plain, not colored at all, macaron batter into my piping bag. Now, if you are making white macaron shells like these and you want to make sure that the shells remain truly white, then I do recommend adding in a bit of white gel or powdered food colorant. Because almond flour naturally is a bit yellow, and then during the baking process, the macaron shells can brown just a little bit. That is perfectly normal. If it browns a lot, that's not as normal, but just a little bit is pretty normal. So between the almond flour and the baking process, if you have just a natural shell, it is quite normal that it would look a bit more off-white or even a bit tan after being baked. So if you want these to be pristine white macaron shells, make sure to add a bit of white food colorant. Then after the macaron shells are piped, I've tapped my trays. I am sprinkling on the chopped macadamia nuts. Now, if you want to use already roasted macadamia nuts, you can, though I recommend staying away from salted macadamia nuts because the salt can sometimes have a weird reaction with the macaron shell. Salt can eat away at the top of the shell, so I do recommend looking for unsalted macadamia nuts when you go to use them. I'll just get these baked off in my oven here, and then we'll get into the fillings. Next, I'm going to show you a really simple macadamia nut praline, and because I'm using those same macadamia nuts that I bought for the top and for this filling, I got some that were already dry roasted, so I am not going to be baking these. Then I have some water and sugar going into a small saucepan. If you do not find already roasted macadamia nuts, you can bake them in your oven for about 10 minutes on a low heat. Something like 300 or 325 Fahrenheit would be sufficient. You don't want them to be super toasty, but just a hint of a light brown color would be great. Now, I am not using a dry caramel, I'm just making a regular caramel, so I have the water in there as well as the sugar. So first I want to get this to a sugar syrup state. I want all of the sugar to completely melt and dissolve into the water. Then you will notice over time as it begins to boil, all the sugar should be completely dissolved. It will start looking thicker like a simple syrup, and as you cook it, as that water evaporates, the sugar will begin to caramelize, and you will notice the sugar turning a light golden brown and then turning to a darker, deeper amber brown color. Now, with any caramel, this point is very key because things will move very quickly. So as soon as you notice a rich golden brown color, take it off the heat immediately and pour it straight over the macadamia nuts. If you wait too long, the sugar can burn, and that is not a flavor we want to introduce into these macaron shells. After the sugar has completely cooled down, give that at least several hours or overnight. Transfer everything into your food processor and blend it for several minutes until it completely forms a praline paste. If you have been mixing for 5 minutes and it's still not coming together, you can add a tiny little drizzle of a neutral oil like grapeseed oil or a canola oil would be fine to help it come together. The last thing we're going to make is the mango white chocolate buttercream. Most of the time when I put mango into my macarons, I use a ganache, but I wanted to use an ermine style buttercream, both for the texture and also because I thought it would allow me to have a really smooth, creamy mango element without adding too much sugar. But because it is not so sweet, I am adding in a bit of white chocolate to help bring this more into that sweet tropical dessert feeling. So for the ermine buttercream, I have my flour that I have just cooked in my saucepan for a little bit. That is heat treating the flour because this isn't going to be baked, it's a buttercream. Then I'm going to whisk in both regular white sugar and brown sugar. I really like the addition of the brown sugar here because it provides a bit of that molassesy sort of undertone that is so delicious. Then I'm adding in the liquids, the cream and the mango puree. It is super important to use a really good quality mango puree, whether you're buying frozen mango puree or making your own. Make sure you're starting off with good quality mango puree or good quality fresh mangoes that are completely ripe. Otherwise, this will not be as delicious as it could be. I am just whisking this on about a medium heat until it completely thickens up and begins to boil. It should look similar to a pastry cream or a custard when it is ready. As soon as I see it boiling, I'll pull it off the heat and then we are almost done with this buttercream. Now I am going to transfer this thickened mango mixture into a little bowl, cover the surface on contact with plastic wrap, and just set it aside to cool down to about 30 degrees Celsius. I don't want it to be completely cold, but if it's too hot, it's going to melt the butter and you'll have a really hard time creating your buttercream. So once it has cooled down, I'm putting my butter into the bowl of my mixer and I'm going to whip that on a pretty high speed for several minutes until the butter lightens and looks really fluffy and light, almost like it's already a buttercream. Then once my butter looks like that, I'm going to slowly incorporate in that cooled mango mixture. I usually like to do this in about 3 or 4 additions, but it's not the end of the world if you just dump it all in. It might just take a bit longer to truly incorporate. So I like to go in a little bit at a time, and then once everything is incorporated, before I switch over to a paddle attachment, I always like to, and I really recommend you do as well, do a little taste test. At this point, if you wanted to add anything else, if you're like, you know what, it needs vanilla extract, it needs whatever else, you can add it in. It is not too late. I am adding in some melted white chocolate. This is optional. It is just if you, again, want this to be a little bit sweeter, a little bit creamier. I think it's a really nice touch. But if you don't want to, it is something that you can leave out. You will still have an amazing buttercream. Once you are sure the buttercream is to your taste, all the flavors are there, you're ready to finish it up, switch to that paddle attachment and mix on a really low speed for several minutes before transferring that buttercream into your piping bag fitted with your piping tip. I really like to use an 804 piping tip when I'm piping a nice thick border of buttercream, though if you want to use something smaller, an 803 or even an 802, if you want to use a star tip, either a French star or a regular star tip, or something even bigger if you want to pipe one huge bulb. Any of these different directions are perfectly fine. You can do whatever suits your personal preferences the best. So after I pipe this really big ring of buttercream, and I did not add any colorant in this, the yellow is completely coming from that mango puree, and I love it. I think it's such a great contrast with the white macaron shell and the macadamia nuts on the top. After I get this all piped, I'm going to go in there with that macadamia macadamia nut praline. So in the buttercream, we have that little hint of the brown sugar, which will mirror the flavor of the caramel in the praline a little bit. We have the macadamia nut praline that is also mirrored in the macadamia nuts on top of the shell. And then we have that bright burst of fresh mango flavor in the buttercream, that little bit of white chocolate just to soften all of the edges, and all together, this is incredible. Again, there are a lot of different directions you can go in if you choose not to add the white chocolate into the buttercream, if you actually don't want to add the macadamia nut praline at all, if you want this just to be a mango or mango white chocolate macaron, you could do that. If you want to stick with just the macadamia nut praline, if you want to replace the mango with something more neutral like cream, you could do that as well. There are so many ways you can play around with this macaron, and all of them would be so delicious. I really hope you give this recipe a try. I can't wait to hear what you think of the end result, and I'm really excited to see you in the next video. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!